Whenever they announce a game that I have been waiting for years, there will always be that anxiety that it won't be as good as I'm expecting it to be. Borderlands 3, Yooka-Laylee, Saints Row 5, Origami King, none of these games were flat out terrible, but I was expecting them to be way better than they were. Well, actually, Saints Row was pretty bad, but the point is, Pikmin 4 is not one of those games. I have been waiting for this game since Miyamoto said it was very close to completion 98 years ago, and then when it was finally announced last year, I got a little bit scared. Like, what if they mess it up? What if they ruin the gameplay? What if they kill Olimar and force you to play as Louis the whole game? What if they give the characters white outlines? Hype can be dangerous, but this is the first time in a while that I feel like the wait actually paid off. The SparkNotes version of this video is basically that Pikmin 4 is the ultimate Pikmin game. As somebody who's been playing the game since the first one came out during the Great Depression, I feel strongly that it did almost everything right. This is a knockout game, one of the best Switch games you can play, and if you're currently playing a Switch game that isn't Pikmin 4, you are being stupid. If I catch you playing Zelda or Mario Land, I will slap that controller out of your hand and make you play this instead. Nintendo is doing a major push with Pikmin right now. All three of the previous games were re-released on the Switch. There's a Pikmin reference in the Mario movie, and this new one has been getting all kinds of attention, including in-depth and personal interviews with the developers, which is where we learned that the works of Tim Burton had an effect on the game's art direction since day one. Look, there's even an Edward Scissorhands reference. Every single Pikmin game is an incredible piece of art that got cheated out of the recognition that it deserved by the suboptimal circumstances surrounding it. The first two games were released for the GameCube, which is a great console that apparently nobody bought. So what does Nintendo do to save this amazing series from relative obscurity? Well, they released the third game on the Wii U, which sold even less than the GameCube. Nintendo probably saw that the Switch is actually selling more than 3 units and realized that this might be their last chance to make Pikmin a legitimate iconic series, and damn it, I will make it happen myself if they don't. If, like me, you've been waiting on this game for 300 years and you don't want any spoilers, consider this video the danger zone, because I will be spoiling a lot of big stuff, both in terms of gameplay and story, because I just have so much to say. So if you don't want to see any of that, stop the video and come back in 10 years when you've beaten the game, because it's actually a pretty long game. But even if this video does spoil things for you, I promise you it's still worth playing, spoilers or otherwise. Someone spoiled the ending of Mother 3 for me and it still blew me away. Some things are good enough to withstand spoilers, and I think Pikmin 4 is one of those things, but even so, this is your last warning. If you want zero spoilers of any description, come back to this video when you've beaten the game. Alright, so Louis was actually Olimar's dad the whole time, and the entire game of Pikmin 2 was a simulation designed to train the Hakatations for an intergalactic war with an alien faction. First, let's talk about the most important part of any video game, the graphics. If you really wanted to, you could go all Digital Foundry and point out some of the technical shortcomings, but if we're actually being real here, this is a Switch game. And even if it wasn't, this is still a beautiful, beautiful video game. The scale of the worlds is far greater than any of the previous titles, and there are a lot of moments where you're standing on a tall structure. You can see all the playable landscapes in the distance. The imagery is striking to a degree that's very impressive even for a Pikmin game, and it almost reminded me of when I saw Pikmin 1 for the first time all the way back in 2001. There is a noticeable upgrade from Pikmin 3. Lighting, models, and shadows are all substantially better. The photorealistic environments, indoors and outdoors, juxtaposed against the whimsical, otherworldly depictions of the Pikmin and the creatures with which they desperately try to coexist. If Switch games always looked this good, I would never make fun of Nintendo again. Its puny portable hardware is definitely getting its workout on this game. The sound design is also very good, with incredibly satisfying sound effects that I just don't get tired of. The tapping of hundreds of tiny little feet on different terrain as you lead the charge against the indifferent cruelty of the world. And the wonderfully atmospheric score that perfectly reflects the visual attitude on screen. On top of having some of the best gameplay in the series to date, Pikmin 4 is big. Really big. It is monumental. This is easily bigger than all of the previous titles. You can 100% Pikmin 1 and 2 in the time that it takes to get to the credits in Pikmin 4, and then you're still not done because the game hits you with an additional 10 hours of post-credits post-game. It just keeps going, and when you're done, you're gonna feel like the Pikmin man. The Pikman, if you will.
Pikmin.
First off, this is the only Pikmin game that had the balls to put in all Pikmin types from the previous titles. I'm talking white Pikmin, purple Pikmin, rock Pikmin, cock Pikmin, ice Pikmin, dice Pikmin. There are so many goddamn Pikmin, man. They should call this game Pikmin Infinity. The sheer variety of Pikmin types, combining all the previously available ones with ice Pikmin that can freeze water and glow Pikmin that can warp through time and space, is great. But the real star of the show is Ochi, the cute rescue pup who can absolutely obliterate enemies to the point of being unrecognizable. This is easily the biggest mechanical innovation ever introduced to the series, and even ends up fixing a lot of the previous game's more tedious moments. I remember Pikmin would always get separated or lost or stuck on the terrain when trying to follow the leader. So this game said, okay, why don't you just carry them all on your back at once and all you have to worry about is controlling the dog. Pikmin 4's gameplay has far more verticality than any of the previous titles, thanks to Ochi's ability to jump even with a billion Pikmin on his back, and above everything else, this is my favorite addition to the gameplay. I never get tired of loading a bunch of Pikmin on Ochi's back and then charging into an enemy, flinging your Pikmin onto it all at once, getting a slice of damage immediately, and then subsequently inflicting tons more. And if you upgrade his stun ability and marry that to the ice Pikmin, you can stun them into a freeze, allowing you to just absolutely cripple even the biggest, baddest motherfuckers in the world in a matter of seconds. Check out the Empress Bulblax right here. When I fight this thing in Pikmin 2, she screws me over 300 times in a row, even though I've beaten the game infinity times. Watch what happens when I fight her in Pikmin 4. I just killed her in 3 seconds. There are a ton of new gameplay scenarios. On top of the usual exploration and collection gameplay from the previous titles, there's the dandori sequences where you have to collect as many treasures and downed enemies as you can in the time limit. It's kinda like a retread of Pikmin 2's challenge mode, except this time you can get a gold medal for being perfect, and also there are a bunch of special ones that you unlock near the end and they're fucking impossible, like this one that I beat by literal milliseconds. Dandori battles, where you have to literally fight a guy to the death over treasures and downed enemies. There's the sequence after you rescue Olimar, where you play through the levels again as him, except they're heavily remixed, and there's a time limit, just like the first game. All of this adds a lot of replayability to the games, where you can keep trying for better times or even shoot for the platinum medals, which require you to be an insane person. Then there's the nighttime expeditions, where it turns into a tower defense game. Enemies go insane and try to destroy this tower of medical juice. It is terrifying, it is tense, but also adds a whole new dynamic to the usual Pikmin affair. And this is the essence of Pikmin 4. It feels like Nintendo going absolutely all out, looking at every single thing they could possibly do with Pikmin and then just doing it. It's like they knew we wouldn't want to wait another 10 years for Pikmin 5, so they just put Pikmin 4 and 5 into one game and called it Pikmin 4. It is so hard to sum up this game because there is just so much of the game in this game to sum up. Did I mention Pikmin 4 is a game? Unfortunately, to get at all that stuff, you're gonna have to suffer through non-stop long-ass dialogue boxes explaining every single mechanic and feature, so your first playthrough is gonna start out with an incredibly long slog of dialogue boxes that last about 2 hours. And really, that's the downside of making a game as deep and complex as Pikmin, is that the game feels the need to constantly explain and re-explain itself to you over and over again. Really, that's the biggest beef I have with this game, is that it takes its time setting you free, but once it does, it feels incredible, and the game immediately skyrockets in quality, and you forget all about it. I do recommend playing the game more than once because on subsequent playthroughs, when you already know how the game works, you can just mash through all the tutorials like a speedrunner. Mechanically, Pikmin 4 does a lot of things that at first made me go, Nintendo, what the f is your problem? But once you actually sink your teeth into the game, it starts to click really fast, and you realize that, oh yeah, game designers do things for a reason. Why do you have to whistle for a good half second to get busy Pikmin to come to you, so you don't accidentally call them off a task that you actually want them to do? Why does the game stop you from throwing Pikmin at an object for a second? Because it's briefly stopping you from throwing an unnecessarily large number so you have more for other tasks. Why can you only have 3 Pikmin types on the surface at once? Because shut up. Yes, not every single decision makes complete sense on the surface, but the game is designed such that it never really impedes upon your ability to play the game. The auto-targeting system took some time to get used to, but when I see clustered groups of small enemies and watch the cursor jump between them as I throw Pikmin, allowing you to dispose of them super quickly, suddenly it felt really good, and it is definitely a dramatic improvement over Pikmin 3. Now, Pikmin 3's targeting system on paper was a great idea because the on-the-fly precision required by Pikmin 1 and 2, where you have to precisely drag the cursor on top of an enemy on the fly with the same stick that controls the characters, isn't really intuitive for a lot of people. In practice, though, it was very hit or miss, literally. In Pikmin 3, you can only target an enemy after manually and precisely dragging the cursor over them, which almost makes it self-defeating. It was still helpful sometimes, but it needed some adjusting. What happened to Ocarina of Time, where you could just look in the general direction of an object or an enemy and a little yellow arrow would appear above their head and you could just target them by hitting a button? This was 15 years before Pikmin 3, Nintendo. What are you doing, man? I don't know if the deluxe version fixed any of that because I haven't played that version, but that is how it was for me. Pikmin 4 thankfully improved the targeting system such that it's still not perfect, but way better than 3. In addition to mechanical tweaks, Pikmin 4 does a lot of work to cut down on tedium. Remember in Pikmin 2 where you'd reach a cave and it would tell you all the hazards to watch out for, so you had to walk all the way back to the base to get the right Pikmin for the job? Pikmin 4 instead said, okay, here's the cave and here's a recommended preset of Pikmin to take with you into the cave, and also you don't have to go to the onion, we'll just spawn them right there with you. They also let you move the base around to cut down on travel time, allowing Pikmin much more efficient routes for bringing stuff back. I've always found the Pikmin formula to be very addicting, but by cutting down on tedium where they can, its formula became so overpowering that I cannot stop playing it. One play session in particular had me going to bed at 5 AM. I just don't get tired of it. The success of Pikmin 4's new advancements is that they seem to be built around how people actually play Pikmin, like the developers watched people play the previous titles and went, alright, what mistakes do they keep making, what pitfalls do they keep falling in, and how do we brush that up without making the game too easy? A lot of this new stuff ties into the central idea of dandori, which is the art of compartmentalizing tasks and optimizing your approach such that you get the most done in the least amount of time. Dividing labor, assigning groups to the task that suits them best, acute awareness of what you can and cannot do while other things are being done, and doing everything in your power to avoid idling. If you have played any of the previous Pikmin titles, you're probably already used to thinking in these terms, but this game, above all the previous games, loves to drive home this idea and takes it further than they ever have before. I remember I kept getting a disappointing score on this dandori mission and I couldn't figure out why until I realized that the Pikmin were using a suboptimal route because rock Pikmin cannot walk through water. Flying Pikmin are great for gold nuggets because they can just fly over everything, slowly chipping it away. This guy's not doing anything, go carry that thing. I can't build this until these guys are finished over here, but maybe I can go here with Ochi and make him do this. This goes here, that goes there, this is his, that one's hers, this is hers, and now it's his. One tiny little optimization can be the difference between a bronze or a silver medal, and the accumulation of several micro optimizations can add up to an exceptionally well-oiled machine. That's what makes the dandori mission's so fun. In a few attempts, I went from this is impossible to getting a platinum medal because every single time I noticed a flaw in my strategy and I just kept patching and repatching the holes in my plan. This game will make you feel like a genius, and the sweet secret of dandori is that most of us in some way or another are already practicing it in our real day-to-day lives. Rendering a video means I can't record game footage because my GPU is busy with the video, so while I'm rendering, I clean up my room or lift weights, make dinner, or even take a piss. Writing videos on your phone while taking a shit probably sounds like a gross out joke, but really that is the essence of dandori. You know, your hands are free and your phone is free, so why not use them productively? I was very worried that this game was going to be way too easy to be friendly to casual players, like the puzzles and combat were going to be extremely rudimentary. I don't want to say it's a hard game because I just got done beating Dark Souls 2, which is the first and only hard video game ever created, but even as somebody who's been playing Pikmin for a while, the campaign was very engaging and even required me to actually try. Now let's talk caves. Those were some of my favorite parts of Pikmin 2, so I was surprised to find that a lot of people didn't like them very much. The common complaint that I've seen is that there is way too much reliance on RNG with respect to the placement of the research pod, the treasures, the enemies, and the bombs that just drop out of the sky randomly. While I think a lot of that heartache can be avoided by leaving the Pikmin at the base and running around as one guy to trigger all the bastard moves before bringing the rest of the army, I get the frustration. Pikmin 4's caves take a different approach to difficulty. They are far more consistent with little reliance on RNG at all to create surprises and seemingly unfair challenge, and they balanced it with far more environmental puzzles and gameplay-oriented set pieces. Bouncy mushrooms return from Pikmin 3, but then they start adding in fans and conveyor belts and Tony Hawk rail grinding. Every single Pikmin game has tried to make the game mechanics far more reliable and accessible without reducing the actual game difficulty, and Pikmin 4 adds a number of flourishes that I never thought that I wanted, but after going back to the previous games that don't have them, I can confidently say that they made the right decision. Going back to Pikmin 2 after playing Pikmin 4 for hours was traumatizing. There's no targeting system, meaning you often have to carefully drag the cursor around mid-combat. Pikmin cannot be thrown if they're too far away from you. All of this stuff that never really bothered me when I played these old games before suddenly feels busted as hell. Pikmin 4 is newcomer friendly with a lot of polishes and innovations that make the game far more manageable and reliable for people who may be understandably intimidated by the game at a fundamental level, allowing it to be accessible but without stooping to superficial easy modes. Well, that is to say, there is a rewind feature, I think, but I don't have footage of that because I never used it. This feature seems like a direct response to people's tendency to save scum in Pikmin 2 whenever they would get screwed over by a random bomb drop. Nintendo saw that people were just gonna artificially rewind the game like that anyway, so they just decided to directly facilitate it. It's like I was saying earlier, it's built around how people actually play the games. Pikmin 4 definitely wants newcomers not to feel intimidated, but it's also bursting at the seams with references that longtime fans are gonna pick up on in a number of if you know moments. Tons of enemies, including enemies we haven't seen since Pikmin 1, make a comeback, and with a far higher standard of graphical fidelity. Look, they even brought back this son of a bitch. Treasures take the form of real-life objects, including Nintendo memorabilia, and all the characters have something to say about it, just like in Pikmin 2. And that's the coolest thing about this game. On top of being an all-you-can-eat buffet of new mechanics and ideas, they took almost all of the coolest things from the previous titles. Of course, in addition to all the returning enemies, there are also a bunch of weirdo new enemies. There is a boss in this game that is a disco ball with legs that keeps playing the air horn sound, and for a minute I thought I was playing a ROM hack. There are a whole bunch of musical references to the previous titles as well, and I'm also pretty sure I heard my Pikmin singing the theme from Awakening Wood. And then there's the story, which is the most subjective part of this entire thing, and the only part you can't just get used to by experiencing it over and over and over again. Yes, they did pull some retcon bullshit, and yes, I wish they didn't do that, but considering the circumstances, I thought the rest of the story was alright. The premise is that you, as a foot soldier of the Rescue Corps, are tasked with finding and rescuing Captain Olimar. But because things are never that simple, you find that he, along with many others, have been turned into these weird leaf men who are clinically obsessed with the art of dandori to the point that it's the only thing they can think and talk about. It's almost like they got a Death Stranding mule thing going on. I think the narratives in the previous titles had an element of ambiguity to them, with weirdo stuff that is a little more open to interpretation or maybe symbolic of greater things. Pikmin 4's narrative, by comparison, felt a little bit more shallow, but it is still very serviceable. It's definitely carried by all the vibrant personalities of all the people that you rescue. They all have aspirations and dreams and ambitions. All of these very, very unique people from different walks of life were all drawn to this planet for one reason or another. On the very surface level, that's probably one of the story's more interesting components. Really though, Pikmin has always had an ability to tell hundreds of stories with no dialogue at all. It's a tragic war documentary where a leader, feigning fearlessness, charges into battle with an army of individuals that the game expects you to dehumanize and use as mere resources despite trying to pull on your heartstrings with their adorable faces and expressive animations. These creatures can very obviously feel pain and fear. You can hear them screaming in agony as they're killed. Pikmin 1 had the dynamic of Pikmin almost as a found family, with Olimar constantly being away from his actual family working at what is effectively an interplanetary trucking company. He was shown to have a passion for biology and botany, heavily implying that he's overqualified for the grunt work that he's forced to do, and the Pikmin are the only ones that seem to give him the respect that he deserves. Pikmin 2, the president makes the allegorical connection between Pikmin and company employees. It also shows that the only remnants of human civilization are corporate products that are completely mystifying to the Hakatations, yet the company is still creating sales pitches for them anyway. In this way, Pikmin 2 kinda criticizes consumer culture, but in a funny tongue-in-cheek way instead of stooping to narcissistic, preachy TED Talks. Pikmin 3, the entire plot is the direct result of poor resource management, which is the exact thing that will screw you over in gameplay. Every single one of these games is a History Channel documentary on the delicate, vicious ecosystem of the Pikmin world. I can see Morgan Freeman narrating it right now. In the year 2806, Pikmin flourished on the Earth's surface, propagating by grinding up the corpses of their enemies into a bloody red paste. This game is rated E, you know. Even though Pikmin 4, much like the previous titles, is full to the brim with that trademark Nintendo whimsy, it doesn't sugarcoat how cruel and vicious the natural world can be. Pikmin are crushed, eaten, set on fire, drowned, poisoned, electrocuted, blown up, shot at with a fucking mounted assault rifle. That's the truly messed up thing about Pikmin. Compared to Nintendo's other titles, where there's very clearly an evil bastard provoking the protagonist, there is no real evil in Pikmin. All of the enemies, all of the creatures, are just living out their lives, behaving on pure instinct, acting out their natural cycle, and performing their role in the circle of life. If anyone is the bad guy in this world, it's probably you for weaponizing your pseudo-symbiosis with the Pikmin, commanding them to demolish and disrupt the ecosystem, killing animals indiscriminately. But at the same time, you're just trying to survive as well. I guess there are no ethics in the wild. A lot of sequels miss out on what makes the previous titles so great, but Pikmin 4 is one of the few examples of a perfect sequel, bringing back everything you could want and building upon the already solid groundwork of its predecessors. This is a beautiful video game. It is an engaging game. Its world and its creatures are enthralling, and the journey, the adventure, the danger, the triumph against the indifferent cruelty of the universe. I guess what I'm trying to say is, it's Pikmin. And that's all I really wanted.